Good evening, you're watching The Big Question. Tonight, school fees have turned into EMIs. From 3.5 lakh rupees in smaller cities to 25 lakhs in metro IB schools, education costs are rising so fast that even nursery admissions now come with installment plans, early bird discounts, and payment schedules that look suspiciously like buying a car. A decade ago, you would have saved up for college tuition. Today, you swipe a credit line or sign up for buy now, pay later financing just to keep up. But what does this do to middle-class families? Are EMIs normalizing overspending in education? Are schools exploiting the aspirations of parents? Or is this simply the inevitable price of premium schooling in urban India? This evening, we decode this trend with those tracking it closely. Joining me are Dr. Amita Vattal, Chairperson and Executive Director of the DLF Foundation Schools and Scholarships, Sachin Taparia, Chairman and Founder of Local Circles with insights from thousands of parents across India. I also have Rishabh Mehta, founder of Grey Quest, which finances these school fees, and Anand Ladha, founder of Investage for Kal, to help you budget smartly for your child's education. But before I come to you, I actually want to go to Ashish Singhal, co-founder of CoinSwitch, whose very viral social media post was the one that sparked this discussion. Ashish, you compared paying nursery fees to taking on a car loan. A lot of parents, including me, nodded in agreement. What was happening in your own experience in life that made you feel that you had to speak up?
So when I was exploring schools for my daughter who was very, very small and, trying to figure out, what kind of, board I should look at, what kind of fees that I'm looking at, because I have to plan for years of education, right? So what I learned from my colleagues were that even in play schools in Bangalore, the price of, the annual fee is more than 2 lakh. The base fee might be low, but there are a lot of add-ons which added up to these 2 lakh, or it's in some cases even higher. And this does not even include, bus fee or additional activities fee, which could be even higher from there on, right? Even books and even, school uniform. So this was very shocking for me to see that, the prices, which the middle class salary hasn't grown too much in years. It is a CAGR of 0.4%. And while schools are increasing fee 10 to 30% every single year. So this creates a burden on the middle class. Education used to be a great leveler for every middle class to feel that my children will do better than me because I will give them a better education and hopefully they'll get a better job and a better life. And now this dream is putting a lot of pressure on young parents on how to plan this better education for their kids.
So, your post quickly went viral, and clearly this isn't an isolated complaint. In your view, why are so many middle-class families feeling this kind of pressure right now?
I think what the inflation rate and, on paper, it might be 4%, but it's actually not 4%. It's much, much higher than that. And that is what we are seeing in reality. Whenever a parent approaches a school, maybe, he gets fined with the fee, take the admission. Next year, the fee would probably, increase by 15%, while the salaries are not catching up to that pace. So the real inflation in these cities is actually causing a lot of stress to these parents, because they cannot plan this kind of increase in school fees every single year because their salaries are not matching up to it. So how do they plan for it? And this causes a lot of mental stress to these parents, because they can't plan properly on how do they ensure that year after year with these increases, they're able to keep up the level of education that they want for their children, right? So I think that is the frustration that is building up across parents across these cities.
Sure. So, some schools say that these high fees are necessary to provide what they're calling world-class facilities and global exposure. But where do we draw the line between investing in quality and pricing out ordinary families?
So I think what I'm talking about is not an international school. I'm talking about a CBSE school, right? And this is a general comparison. It is not that we are looking for elite schools where the facility might be so high that you have to pay for that fees. I'm talking about general education. If you go and just average the cost of all the CBSE schools out there, you will find that 2 lakh is not an outlandish number. But middle class, for a middle class, it is almost 19% of their monthly or the yearly income, right? So it has gone from 4% what it used to be to 19% in just a decade. So this is causing that stress. This is like I said before, right? Education for all of us has been the great equalizer. Without having maybe the public infrastructure which could compete with this private and make sure that some supply and demand are equated. Today every parent want their kids to have the best education. That is why they try to get a school which is probably slightly better, slightly out of reach, so that their children can do more in their future, right? And this demand and supply ratio is causing these schools to charge probably slightly higher than they should. And having a good public infrastructure would make sure that there is enough supply out there, enough quality supply, that the parent have more options. And if parents have more options, I'm sure that the fee cannot increase year on year to the level that it is increasing today.
Okay, and lastly, if policymakers or even schools are listening in, we have some panelists that are representing the schools. What's one change you believe could make quality education more affordable and transparent for everyone?
I think some states have done a better job in which they have implemented some kind of caps or a routine update which has gone through state governments. I think maybe, and I'm talking as a parent, not as an educator or in this field entirely, and probably those people may have better ideas than me. But the idea is that these states have done it. They would have seen some goodness coming out of it. Why can't we learn it across India and apply to all the states in India, or maybe share this data with different states so that they can learn and apply that equally across states, so that parents in different states don't suffer differently, right? The idea is that some states have done a better job. Why can't we learn from them and make sure that every state, these processes are implemented in which the fee increase is slightly regulated, right? Moderately regulated, to ensure that parents don't feel the burden or increased burden every year. Every year they have to replan all their finances, which is impossible for a middle class family. And I think that is what we want.
Right, Ashish, thank you so much for joining us, and a pity that you couldn't stay on for the rest of the discussion, but this is great. I think many parents, including me, resonate with your social media post, and I think this is something that's extremely important. Let's move to our guests now. Dr. Amita Vattal, you've been in school administration for decades. How did we get to a point where 15 to 25 lakh fees for K-12 are almost routine? Is this the cost of quality, or would you say the price of prestige?
Actually, I think you're preaching to the converted, because I've always believed that we must have quality education at affordable rates. And I've worked with institutions that are focused in that manner. However, having said that, it was interesting when I was listening to the panelists who seemed filled with anguish about, we want children to have the best education. What is the best education? Is it a school that looks like a 5-star hotel? I mean, after all, we have to also look at ourselves and see what are we looking at as best education. Sometimes we have the most fabulous looking infrastructure, but there's nothing inside. There's no pedagogy. The teachers aren't good enough. And yet, so we have to understand the first question that a parent walks in and says, "Aapke school mein air conditioning hai?" Now, electricity bills, there are so many issues that come up. I do believe that you have to strike a balance between affordability and sustainability. It's just not a financial issue. It's an ethical one. But schools need resources to innovate and grow. But they also need to maintain a certain inclusivity. And I think that's extremely important, because I run budget schools and I know how difficult it is because I'm catering to a lower middle class and a middle class. But having said that, there is so much in the anvil, because after COVID, when schools were shut down, there's been so much involvement of bettering the infrastructure, the coming in of the national education policy, which says that, we have to have it's imperative to have a lot of technology in our classrooms, AI, coding, innovative labs. After all these things come with money. And, the whole idea of how do we we have to have these compliances in place. You have a CBSE inspection. They ensure that you must pay your teachers the seventh and now the eighth pay commission. I mean, there's a sort of a horror. The eighth pay commission is 30% more. So what I'm trying to say is that if you're trying to run a good school where you're trying to bring in good teachers, you're giving them their salaries as per norms and as per the DA rise every year, then there are issues. But yes, there are organizations which are doing complete rip-offs on parents. And I think that's where we have to definitely find a solution in transparent budgeting, and inclusive stakeholders. There has to be a stakeholder dialogue. I mean, I remember in the early days, we used to always call our parent communities and say, this is the way we're looking at a fee hike. There has to be transparency with the person who's investing in your school. And there has to be a certain differentiated fee model because it supports sort of cross-subsidization without compromising on standards.
Okay.
So I think we do have to look at these different methods of how we, look at the fee dilemma.
Fantastic points made there by Dr. Vattal. Sachin, welcome back to NDTV Profit and to the big question. You run India's largest citizen engagement platform. What are parents telling you? Do they feel trapped or do they see EMIs as a convenience?
So, Sanjana, a lot of parents feel trapped. We've run 2 surveys on the subject. The first survey was, post-COVID, really looking at the last 3 years. How much have, fee increases been over this 3-year period? And 44% of the parents basically there have said that they have experienced a fee hike anywhere between 50 to 80%. Many states would come out, many state governments would come out and say we have capped fee increases at 10% in our state, but on the ground, it is not happening. That's what the parents are saying. The second question that we asked, parents was for this year, this financial year, 25-26, as to what has the fee increase been. And 80%, over 80%, and this is, specific to private schools, and over 80% parents have basically come out and said that that increase basically has been above 10%. 50% have said that it's been above 20%. So I think the capping of fee hikes or fee increases is clearly not working. Now, what we are also learning, based on the community discussions and other intelligence, is that, over the last decade, a lot of parents basically and a lot of students, they've been looking to go abroad for undergraduate degrees. And as a result, there has been a massive increase in the number of international curriculum schools in India. And there, you have all kinds of structures. You have private companies that are operating schools. By default in India, you have to, if you're a school, it has to be a trust-based school. It has to follow the right to education, law, all of that. But here you have private companies who are operating schools for profit. Right. So there, what is happening is essentially you're seeing the kind of fee structures that you talked about earlier, anywhere from 6 lakhs to 25 lakhs. And some of these same schools also operate CBSE schools. So if you have both these structures running within the same school, you can't charge 20 lakhs for one school and 2 lakhs for the other school. So there goes up your CBSE structure because some of the facilities are common. Right. So there's various reasons, why we are seeing this kind of fee increase, basically, where schools are trying to essentially, have both these structures within the school, and they don't want to have too much disparity. So you have the CBSE fees, which is also rising, like the IB or the IGCSE fee. So I think all of this has to really, you have to go back to the drawing board. And both the state governments and the central government have to play an important role here as to how to regulate this. Today, we have no effective regulation in the country, barring a few states where there is some, upper limit. But most of the country, we are struggling to regulate school fee increases.
All right. Great insight. Let's talk financing boom and bust. Rishabh Mehta, Greyquest finances school fees. But Rishabh, we've seen fintech players in the past, like Propelled, like Credila. They were once around for higher education, but they seem to have exited this market. So trying to understand, while this is probably beneficial and on paper looks like a win-win, what makes this model of EMI so difficult to sustain at scale? Rishabh, you're on mute.
So sorry. Thanks, Sanjana, for inviting me on this panel.
Of course.
I'll take 1 minute to just share a couple of viewpoints outside, relating to what the couple of the other panelists have mentioned about the rise in school fees, right? So there's one particular point that I have noticed, which somehow gets misconstrued by by both the media and the parents, and I think even the school managements are not able to illustrate that point very clearly. We often hear that the fees is rising for a particular parent by 15% from one year to another, right? And I've noticed a couple of scenarios where actually it's just the way the structure of the school fee is done. So I'll give you an example, or due to regulation, and suddenly the parent feels a 15% jump. So I'll give you two examples of that. For instance, in Maharashtra, there's a state regulation where the regulation tells the schools that you can change your fees only once in 2 years. So you cannot change every year, but once in 2 years, and your average hike cannot be more than 7%. So basically, you can increase your fees over 2 years by 15%. Now, because the fee is not increasing every year by 7%, every second year when it changes, the parents suddenly feel a big burden of a sudden 15% increase. And that I have at least observed in the Maharashtra schools, that pinches a parent a lot more than a gradual 7% increase. So that's one instance of, for a parent, when the fee increase happens once in every 2 years, there's a sudden 15% jump, but it's actually a 7%, 2 years of cumulative 7%. And another very interesting, trend that I've observed, many schools, and, we could debate whether they're right or wrong about it, but what they do is they have different fees for different grades. So for instance, for secondary, they could have a fee of, let's say, 1,10,000, but for primary, their fees is 1 lakh. Now, what often happens, and in many schools, this is even grade specific, right? So when parents, or the children move from one grade to another grade, they're not just experiencing the increase in fee in terms of, the inflationary increase, let's say assume 7%. So, in my example, if the primary fee is 1 lakh and if the secondary fee is 1,10,000, when the parent is moving from one section to another section, their fee, the secondary fee for year one versus year two is also going to increase by 7%, right? And that's where, that 1,10,000 goes to 1,17,000. And for the parent, it suddenly seems like the fee is, they were paying 1 lakh in primary, and for in the subsequent year, they're paying 1,17,000. So effectively a 17% increase, right?
Right.
So there are a lot of these nuances that I've noticed, which, and see, of course, these are debatable whether this is the right way to structure the fee, or the regulations are, implemented in the right manner. But because of these nuances, we often see parents suddenly seeing a 15 to 20%, increase. But effectively, it's a more gradual increase. But sometimes it happens over a period of 2 years. It happens with a gap, and sometimes it's just a function of one grade to another grade, right? And again, that's debatable whether fees should be different for different grades.
Absolutely. And I think when it's all kind of slotted together, it really hits you in the face, right? At the cost of sounding very crude. Anand Ladha, sorry, Rishabh, I'll come back to you. Anand Ladha, middle class families now carry EMIs for cars, for phones, holidays, and also school fees. So where do you draw the line between aspiration and over-leveraging? What's your advice for parents that are feeling squeezed?
Firstly, thank you so much for having me on the show. And funny thing is, right now we have EMIs for marriages as well. So
I'm not surprised.
So we are in this world. So I'll give you some basic rules which everyone can follow. And these are ground rules which will help everyone to plan their finances better way. Firstly, you have to ensure that any loan, any EMI which you're doing, if it is above 11.5%, you have to be extra cautious before taking it. This is not probably a good loan for you. Loans are of two categories: good loan, bad loans. Good loans are loans where you get deduction. For example, if you're taking higher education loan, which get deduction in section 80E, even though now Section 80 might not be relevant for a lot of people, but still those loans were available and are right now also available at 8.5% interest rate. That loans are still okay. But if you're taking a personal loan or taking a help from an outsider, which is not suggested right now. Secondly, if you plan properly, you can probably save your own money for higher education. For example, if you're doing a 20,000 rupees SIP in an index fund or a multi-cap or a diversified fund, probably in next 20 years you'll have a corpus of 2.5 crores. I know 20 years down the line, 2.5 crores might be equal to 75-80 lakhs adjusting the inflation in today's term, but still 75-80 lakh is a good corpus which might help you and your kid to plan their future better and to ensure that you are not burdened whenever there is burden of higher education. So this is something which you can plan in advance. Even there is an option of Sukanya Samriddhi scheme specifically for girl child, where you can invest and 8.2% is the interest rate, and that's tax free. So in government schemes, that is one of the most beautiful scheme which we have, which will help you plan better and which will help you to ensure that you are not overburdened by EMIs. And final and important point, whatever EMIs you have, you might be having a home loan EMI, car EMI, any EMI which you have, it should never exceed 50-55% of your monthly income. If it is exceeding that part, probably you need to reconsider your finances and plan it better way.
Right. Great point. Dr. Vattal, should regulators then step in to set clearer caps or standards on annual fee hikes, or do you think that would compromise educational quality?
No, I'm absolutely clear on this. Because I remember as early as the Bansal committee, which I was involved with because fee has always been a huge issue across India. And I think, yes, it's very important to have regulators. Because in fact, we have digital regulators where technically you're supposed to put in number of teachers, the salaries you give them, and you can't really manipulate that. But the problem here is that in spite of regulators coming in spite of so much regulation, we've still gone a little out of control. Because I know that in every school, when you have the board meeting, you have people who come in from the Directorate of Education. There are nominees there, particularly when you're doing your fee raise. So this is where the government regulation in any case are there, because it's not as though the school is operating in a silo. We're supposed to have parent reps. We're supposed to be having government nominees. We cannot have a board meeting when we raise our fees without all these people in the picture. So why is it that fee is being raised if a government nominee is present? And I'm talking CBSE now, because IB is another monster. I don't want to get into that. But certainly with CBSE, when you have a government nominee on board, why is it that then they're allowing this to happen? And why the schools are not being able to transparently put up whatever their fee raise is and have a kind of a school audit about it, so that there's a conversation with a stakeholder? So I think periodically there should be conversations with stakeholders. I definitely think that we have to look into how do we regulate without being draconian, because after all, school also needs a lot of help. Schools are in a difficult situation. So it's not as though I'm saying it's only the parent or it's only the school. We need to have a compassionate regulatory systems in place where the laws are not draconian. At the same time, they have to understand the issues being faced by school and the market, because the market is extremely aspirational. Parents are extremely aspirational.
Absolutely.
Why do they only want those 6 schools, those 7 trophy schools? Why?
Right,
and so automatically people keep raising it. It's a question of the market. The more you raise it, the more the parent goes to it, the more popular the school becomes. It's a very brand-oriented, materialistic society we're living in. And education has become a victim also of this.
Absolutely.
So, it's a mindset that we have to look at. It's not only sitting here and saying, and God forbid, one has to take loans. I mean, I'm an old school person. I just don't believe in loans. And I feel the poor parent, from housing to nursery now, and I was absolutely shocked that now we're looking at loans for nursery. And then higher education. I mean, it's really tragic if we're going to be completely with a plastic card taking loans all the time from people. Horrific.
Okay, but it is our reality now, and it looks like it's going to stay. So I'm afraid I'm out of time, but I'm going to go around quickly and just request if you can just give me a 30-second answer. To all of you, Rishabh, I'll come to you first. What's the one thing you want parents to consider, even though this may be quote-unquote bad for business? What is one thing you want parents to consider before taking an education loan or an EMI?
I'll just want to clarify. At least, we provide a payment platform to schools where parents can pay through multiple payment modes, including UPI, net banking, credit card. EMI is a form of payment.
Right.
And in EMI, it's typically zero cost. So parents don't actually have to pay anything extra. They just pay their school fee and no extra charge. See, I have seen, as Dr. Amita mentioned, right? Parents are extremely aspirational. I know firsthand, working in the industry, there are about 4.5 lakh private schools in the country. Most of them are under 30 or 40,000 rupee annual fee, and most of them struggling for admissions, right? So somewhere the society has turned into higher fee being equated to better schools.
Right.
But it's not that parents don't have options. It's just, for some reason or the other, parents want to gravitate towards higher fee schools.
And they don't want to consider the other options.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Anand, I come to you. 30 seconds. I'm completely out of time.
Yeah. Firstly, only focus on the pointers which you can control. Don't think a lot about the uncontrollables. Focus on the controllables and make sure that you are sending your kid to school for education and not for a matter of prestige.
All right. That's great life advice too. Sachin?
I think, Sanjana, the world is moving towards what you know rather than where you studied, and that's true for college education as well as school education. So I would recommend that parents focus a lot on developing skills, self-learning, and going to schools or sending their kids to schools that they can actually afford.
Okay.
And do a lot more self-learning rather than go for a school which charges way more than their budget.
Absolutely. Fantastic advice and insight there by all my panelists this evening. Thank you so much for joining me on a very exciting and interesting discussion. School fees are no longer a once-a-year check. They've become a monthly burden, a financing decision, and sometimes a lifelong liability. As parents weigh aspiration against affordability, the big question this evening is simple. Are we paying for better education or just better marketing? Thank you to all my guests for joining us, and to our viewers, keep watching NDTV Profit for more stories that matter.